our meeting, so please advise staff and the interpreters that we're going to go ahead with the meeting. Thank you.
Order. Madame la greffière, pouvez-vous nous dire...
I would ask the clerk to tell us if there are any substitutes and how many members are in the room with you, please. Certainly, we have Mr. Généreux in the room with us, and we have Mr. Major replacing Mr. Williamson today. Thank you. Thank you to you.
7 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages. This committee meeting it's for the purpose of committee business. J'aimerais tout d'abord rappeler aux membres.
A little reminder to members that they shut off their cell phones for the health and safety of our interpreters, please. I would also like to welcome the new member, Ms. Martinez Ferrada. Allow me to, first of all, make a few reminders taken from the procedures of the House. First of all, with regard to raising our hand, it is true that the clerk and I do our utmost to respect proper order, and it's easier when we're all present in the meeting room itself. But as of today, I would like to clarify a certain number of things. Please allow me to indicate to you when I am giving you the floor. And I'm asking that you raise your hand on your computer. And for the people in the room, I would ask that you advise the clerk when you want to speak. Over the course of the last meetings, we've seen several reminders, several points of order. They aren't always points of order. Sometimes people use this mechanism to speak. In the future, I would ask members to specify which article of our rules is not being respected. However, if there is any technical problem, please don't hesitate to make a point of order. In the rules of the House, with regard to suspension and adjournment, I think it's very important that I read to you these paragraphs that state that the adjournment of a meeting can be done by the adoption of a motion to that effect. However, most meetings are adjourned more informally, when the chair receives the implied consent of members to adjourn. The committee chair cannot adjourn the meeting without the consent of a majority of the members, unless the chair decides that a case of disorder or misconduct is so serious as to prevent the committee from continuing its work. Committees often suspend meetings for various reasons, with the intention of resuming. Later in the day, suspensions can last just a few seconds, a few hours, even a full day, depending, and a meeting can be suspended more than once. Meetings are, for example, suspended in order to move from a public sitting to in camera, or the reverse, to allow witnesses to get settled or to hear them by video conference, to resolve a problem, to put an end to misconduct, to resolve a simultaneous interpretation issue, or to move from one issue on the agenda to another. The rules allow for committees to suspend meetings when we're called to vote in the House, unless there is unanimous consent of the members of the committee to continue to sit. Consequently, at the end of the last meeting, I had suspended our meeting, but based on what I've just told you, I could not indefinitely suspend last week's meeting because all of the technicians and the staff are supposed to be in their places when we are to resume. Consequently, the meeting was adjourned, but the debate that was suspended was done so to allow Mr. Beaulieu to resume debate this afternoon. Furthermore, And this won't be much longer, given the fact that today we are in our 7th meeting on committee business. Just like you, I would like to see the committee undertake its study work. We've attempted this several times, but unsuccessfully. Nothing is preventing us from having a final day on committee business today. But even if we were to succeed in establishing a calendar for our meetings for our upcoming studies, it will not be able to be possible to hear witnesses next Thursday, or rather this Thursday, Thursday of this week. Given that we didn't receive consent last week, I requested that the clerk begin the study proposed by Ms. Latancio because her motion was carried. So the idea is to undertake this study Thursday, to undertake to hear witnesses. She is trying to obtain witnesses more likely to be available quickly. We received 35 names of witnesses from all parties, and we already have 2 witnesses who accepted to appear next Thursday, and the clerk is continuing her work to try to get witnesses. A point of order, Mr. Chairman? Allow me to finish, says the chair. If we decide in our committee business session of today to emphasize another study, nothing prevents us from undertaking that study next week. We therefore could undertake more than one study at one and the same time, which means that next Thursday, I've asked that we have this meeting, but on Ms. Latancio's motion. But next Tuesday, it is possible that there might be another study decided upon by the committee that will be undertaken. So in consultation with the clerk and based on the rules of the House, the chair can intervene to determine the schedule if the committee doesn't do so itself. It is in that sense that I made this decision. We at present have 2 motions that have been carried thus far and 10 motions that are being studied. So as I stated, given that the meeting was suspended, it is Mr. Beaulieu who will open the debate today. His hand is raised. Mr. Beaulieu, you have the floor.
Excellent. We had voted on a motion. We didn't receive the minutes. We didn't receive the amendment. We made sure the motion wasn't referring to the calendar. And now we're talking about next Tuesday. So I think that this does not have to do with the meaning of what we voted on last time. So we'll continue on. We'll continue on with my proposal. I tabled it at the last meeting. Several amendments have already been made to my proposal. We want to look into the situation of French in Quebec and the impact of federal policy on the Charter of the French language and on French in Quebec. We also included the fact that we should study English in Quebec and French in Quebec, as well as other Francophone and Acadian communities. I believe that this is urgent. It hasn't been looked into for 51 years, which is extraordinary. Never has the federal government or the Official Languages Committee looked into French in Quebec enough to do a study on it. So I believe it is urgent to do so. And never have Quebec research organizations and other organizations been invited to share their point of view. And that is why I believe this proposal should be adopted. Point of order, Mr. Chair. Would it be possible for Mr. Beaulieu to please reread his motion? And Mr. Beaulieu, I have enormous respect for what you're proposing. I think we will agree today. I just want to clarify what you're saying. Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. Please, may I remind you to speak to the chair and allow me to give you the floor, Ms. Lalonde. Mr. Beaulieu. Perfect. During an informal meeting, the proposal was also discussed, and we came up with amendments. There was a new theme, and we thought of amendments for two different parts, and I can tie all of that in now, so I'll reread it. So that pursuant to Standing Order 1083, the committee undertake a study on the measures that the Government of Canada can take, as set out in the throne speech, to protect and promote French, not only outside Quebec, but also within Quebec. The amendment we thought to make, as Ms. Lalonde said, was to add "and in federally regulated businesses." Please do read the motion as is. Your microphone. So A, provide an objective and detailed portrait of the situation of English and French in Quebec, as well as Francophone and Acadian communities, based on key linguistic indicators, such as French as the mother tongue, main language spoken at home, language shifts, main language of work, and so on. B, evaluate the effectiveness of the government's language policies with respect to the objective of protecting and promoting French, as well as the impact of these policies on provincial legislative measures to protect and promote French, in parentheses, particularly the Charter of the French language in Quebec. C, consider possible amendments to the Official Languages Act to harmonize the government's commitment to protect French with provincial legislation. That the committee allocate a minimum of 7 meetings to the study, and that these meetings be completed no later than March 1st, 2021. And we'll see if we leave that date as is, and that the Comort report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the government table a comprehensive response. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. That is the motion for debate. Ms. Lalonde. Thank you, Chair. And please excuse me for the point of order earlier. I'm very sorry. Mr. Beaulieu. Thanks to you, or through you, Mr. Chair. I understand quite well. I very much respect this motion by my colleague, Mr. Beaulieu. And I believe it would be very important to make amendments to the motion, if I may. And Mr. Chair, I'm sure that you have my amendments handy, and these amendments could be shared with members. I sent them to you. I didn't send them to the clerk, but if you'll allow me, perhaps we could have a look at them. So, Mr. Beaulieu and dear colleagues, perhaps I can read them, and afterwards they can be sent to your P9. There is no change to the preamble, no change to Part A. For Part B, so I will read Mr. Beaulieu's motion with my proposed amendments. Evaluate the effectiveness of government language policies, comma, and the current role of federal and provincial laws, and that would be in addition to Mr. Beaulieu's motion, comma, for the impact of the objective, rather, of protecting and promoting French, as well as the impact of, and here is another change. I think you said, Mr. Beaulieu, celle-ci in French, but I would change it to be more specific and say these policies on provincial, or rather, to protect and promote French, particularly the Charter of the French language in Quebec. And that is the first amendment that I propose, which is a change to Part B. So now I would like to see what my colleagues think and see if there's any debate on that amendment. Very well. Could you just repeat it? Definitely, Mr. Beaulieu. So I'll also take my time to help out the interpreters. So B, evaluate the effectiveness of the government's language policies, comma, and in addition, and the impact of federal and provincial laws, comma, to the objective of protecting and promoting French, comma, as well as the impact of these policies on provincial legislative measures to protect and promote French. In parentheses, particularly the Charter of the French language in Quebec. So a few additions would be made, and these additions, in my opinion, are important given the context. They would let us look into different laws in the country and the roles that they play at this time. And it might help us to see the gaps between provincial and federal legislation. In my opinion, this could be something important for this committee to look into as a study. Very well. We can now debate the motion. Any speakers? Mr. Beaulieu. Because it says evaluate the effectiveness of the government's language policies, and that, of course, refers to the federal government, and the role of federal and provincial policies. It's a bit redundant. After that, we could perhaps add, as well as the role of the provincial side, because I don't want it to be redundant. Point of order. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Latanzio. Could Mr. Beaulieu please clarify his amendment or the amendment proposed by my colleague, Ms. Lalonde? Is Mr. Beaulieu suggesting that we should clarify that in the first clause we're referring to the federal government? And then does he want to only include the provincial or does he want to include both? That's my question. Go ahead, Mr. Beaulieu. So evaluating the effectiveness of government's language policies, it was understood that that meant the federal government. But the repetition isn't a huge problem. Okay, thank you. Mr. Blaney, go ahead, please. Thank you. I have gotten familiar with the amendment. I have a question for Ms. Lalonde. Before the committee looks into the impact of federal laws on the decline of French, I think that's something we should add to have a good overall understanding. We are a federal committee, so we should look into federal policy, but I do accept the amendment. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Blaney. There are no other hands raised. So I propose we vote on the amendment. So the amendment, as proposed by Ms. Lalonde, in section B. Is anyone opposed to that amendment? Mr. Chair, could you please reread the amendment, including Mr. Beaulieu's amendment, please? There's No amendment. That's right. Mr. Beaulieu did not propose any amendment. We're going to vote on Mr. Beaulieu's motion with Ms. Lalonde's amendment. Could we please be sent the written text? Yes. Mr. Chair, I have a point of order. Go ahead, Ms. Lalonde. I sent this document to your P9 account. I sent it to Ms. Ménard. I hope it's the right account. That's the clerk's account. I hope you received it. If not, I will send it again. I can send it to my colleagues. Give me just 30 seconds. Dear colleagues, if you would just indulge me with one moment. May I have the name of the clerk, please? Yes, Ms. José Ménard. Mr. Beaulieu, would it be satisfactory for you if I reread that amendment? And that way we can move forward more quickly, if you like.
Monsieur Beaulieu.
Mr. Beaulieu, I would have preferred to have a written version. It may not take too long. Perhaps the clerk could forward it to us. She most certainly heard the motion. It's just one small addition. If that is the case, in order that we might move forward a little bit more quickly, Ms. Lalonde will forward her amendment to the clerk, who will send it out to us. And I imagine that there won't be any changes to what has just been read. If that is the case, in order to move forward more quickly, I would ask that we move to a vote on what we heard. Does that suit you, Mr. Beaulieu? I would prefer to have us vote once we have the written text. Perhaps we could move on to the next amendment if there are any others. No, unfortunately, says the chairman, we can't proceed in this way. So if it is the committee's wish, we will wait until we have a written copy of the amendment. Yes, when we're on site in the room, we get a paper copy, but we're functioning in a hybrid mode, and we want to ensure that Mr. Généreux, who's in the room, also gets a copy of this. Mr. Chairman, point of order. I have just sent Madame Ménard the amendment to Section B, the amended version, and Mr. Beaulieu, I sent it to you as well because you came up on my P9, so I've sent it to you as well. Well, please give us the time to look at the email. So I'll get in touch with the clerk. I'm therefore going to suspend the meeting for 1 minute maximum. If possible, I'd like to intervene for just a second in that regard. I don't want to be too picky here, but efficience doesn't suit me. It's an Anglicism. Very well, we'll suspend for a few moments, colleagues. the amendment provided by Ms. Lalonde, and I will read this amendment to you in order that we be able to vote. So it's evaluate the effectiveness of the government's language policies and the present role of federal and provincial legislations with regard to the objective of protecting and promoting the French language, as well as the impact of these policies on the legislative measures of the provinces for the protection and promotion of French, and in parentheses, particularly the Charter of the French language in Quebec. Is there any objection with regard to adopting this amendment? I would have wanted the floor to intervene. Yes, go ahead. On this amendment, yes, go ahead. Indeed. Looking at this carefully, we're a federal committee, and assessing provincial policies isn't really our role. So what I would propose is that we evaluate the effectiveness of the federal government's language policies with respect to the objective of protecting and promoting French, as well as the impact of these policies on provincial legislative measures. We're studying language policies at the federal level, but is it our role to assess provincial legislative measures? I'm not too sure about that. So I would propose that we reject that amendment, in fact, and that we add federal. Our way of doing things is the following. We can't proceed in this way. If you like, you can present a sub-amendment to the amendment. You have the floor. If that's the case, move a sub-amendment that is clear so that we can move forward. Mr. Chairman, forgive me. I've been raising my hand for quite a while. I'd like to know if you see me or not. I've had my hand up for quite a time. Forgive me, Ms. Martinez-Ferrada. I knew that you're a new member of the committee. You have to click under participants rather than just raising your hand like that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because that's the way with other committees. So fine, I'll use the chat function. Thank you. So, Mr. Beaulieu, very quickly, I'm coming back to you. Yes, I'll move this right away. The sub-amendment would be this. Evaluate the effectiveness of the federal government's language policies, replacing the rest of what Ms. Lalonde proposed. So on the screen before me, I have three speakers, Mr. Arsenault, Ms. Latendue, and Ms. Lafreda. So we're dealing here with the sub-amendment of Mr. Beaulieu. Mr. Arsenault, you have the floor.
Fonctionne pas quand j'appuie sur la barre d'espace.
When I press the space bar, it usually works, and it didn't this time. Apologies. I heard what Mr. Beaulieu stated with regard to the sub-amendment, but if we talk about the effectiveness, efficacité rather than efficience in French, of the federal government's language policies, we will automatically be assessing what's taking place in the provinces. I'm a little concerned here. I'm not sure I really fully understand the sub-amendment. It's not that I'm opposed to it, but I'm not sure I understood the explanation provided by Mr. Beaulieu. Maybe we could say evaluate and study the effectiveness of the provincial policies that will interact with the federal government's language policies. I'm not too sure. But I think Ms. Lalonde's motion covered all of that. That's my grain of salt. Thank you. Madame Latanzio, you have the floor. Microphone, Ms. Latanzio? Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question for clarification purposes for Mr. Beaulieu. I agree with my colleague. If we are going to be undertaking this study, we will have to indeed look at the role of the provincial legislative measures. And my question is this. In Mr. Beaulieu's motion, he does include the promotion of French and the Charter of the French language in Quebec. So I wish to fully grasp his reasons for hesitating the inclusion of provincial legislative measures, because in the first version, we're targeting Quebec law and provincial laws or legislative measures as well. So I would like to have a clarification. Thank you. I have on my list Ms. Martinez-Ferrada and then Mr. Beaulieu, who will be able to answer your questions. Ms. Martinez-Ferrada. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to come back to the question of effectiveness versus the two roles. I think that one complements the other. In other words, looking to see if policies are effective, that's one thing, but we also have to look at the impact of legislative measures. That, to my mind, is important too. If we take the example of immigration, there's an agreement with Quebec that is very specific to the province. And I believe that understanding how that agreement, for example, might have an impact on linguistic issues is important. So I think studying provincial measures' role in all of this is important, and it doesn't take anything away from the basis of the motion put forward by Mr. Beaulieu. It just adds a little plus that will give us another angle in the context of our study. Very well. Thank you, Ms. Martinez-Ferrada. Now we move to Mr. Beaulieu. No one else has raised their hand. Go ahead, Mr. Beaulieu. Yes, my intervention was implicit. What I want to study is the impact of the federal language policy on the provincial language policies. That was my first intent. And I wanted to talk about the Charter of the French Language initially. But rather than assessing each provincial law, I wanted to evaluate, assess the impact, and try to determine the differences. The aim here is that. But we say here, evaluate the effectiveness and possible amendments to the Official Languages Act. So we're not going to be proposing amendments to provincial acts. We simply want to look at the modernization of the Official Languages Act and propose amendments in that regard. So it doesn't add anything to the amendment, to my mind. It just complicates things more. And it places the focus on the provincial legislative measures. That's my issue, but I'm not going to go into conniptions if my sub-amendment is not accepted. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. Ms. Lalonde, you have the floor. Thank you. Mr. Beaulieu, I believe that in your remarks, you've come back to the basis of my amendment to your motion, because I know very well what the reasons are with regard to Quebec, with regard to the decline of French, but I represent Orleans and the province of Ontario, and we too are seeing a decline of French within our French-speaking or Francophone population. And I don't want to drag this out, but I don't understand why we wouldn't at least want to look at the role of provincial laws, acts, and the impact that these legislative measures might have. So it's not a matter of recommending things to the provinces. It's their jurisdiction. I'd never intervene in that way, but I do believe that the committee should at least know within the other provinces what the situation is. So BC, Alberta, and I could talk to you more about Ontario in particular, but I think it would be very worthwhile, to my mind, to look at the present role of the provincial laws and their impact with regard to collaboration, etc., with regard to the gaps as well. And with regard to the federal legislation, we might be able to, via that vehicle, better support the provinces in the process that's been undertaken with regard to the modernization of the Act.
So, Mr. Beaulieu, I understand your frustration and you really want to highlight Quebec, but I'm speaking for my other colleagues who represent other communities outside of Quebec, and we know that they're seeing a decline there too. I think it's worthwhile to look at the role of provincial laws, so I ask for your indulgence. Thank you. So now, on to the sub-amendment. We will vote on Mr. Beaulieu's sub-amendment. And I ask the members, is anyone opposed? Are we in agreement with Mr. Beaulieu's amendment? I would like to have a recorded vote, please. Very well. We will carry out a recorded division. Please go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Monsieur Arsenault?
Ben, étant donné que M. Beaulieu va pas déchirer sa chemise, qu'il comprend ce qu'on dit, je vais voter non.
Monsieur Duguid?
Contre.
Madame Lalonde?
Contre.
Madame Latanzio?
Contre.
Madame Martinez?
Contre.
Monsieur Blaney?
Oui, je vais aussi voter contre pour appuyer la motion de M. Beaulieu par la suite.
Monsieur Dalton?
Je vote contre.
Monsieur
Contre la motion.
Pardon. Monsieur Généreux?
Contre.
Monsieur Mazer?
Contre.
Monsieur Beaulieu?
Pour.
Madame Ashton?
Contre.
Donc, le vote est 10 non.
10 nays, 1 yay.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And so Mr. Beaulieu's sub-amendment has been defeated. Now, I call a vote on Ms. Lalonde's amendment. Does anyone object to carrying this motion on Ms. Lalonde's amendment?
Vois bien la
And so, if I'm seeing correctly, the amendment is adopted. Next, we will vote on Mr. Beaulieu's amendment, or motion as amended. Point of order, Mr. Chair. I would like to propose another amendment to point C. Go ahead, Ms. Lalonde. And with your indulgence, dear colleagues, I am sending this to all of you in your P9 accounts right away. Just one moment. I just want to make sure that Ms. Ménard is on my list. I'm sending it to you straight away. Once again, Mr. Beaulieu, I'm talking about your original motion and point C specifically. Consider all of the tools at the government's disposal and possible changes to the Official Languages Act, to foster the protection and promotion of both of Canada's official languages. That would be my amendment to Part C of Mr. Beaulieu's motion. Thank you. In the meantime, while we're waiting to receive that email, let us debate. First, Mr. Beaulieu and Mr. Blaney with their hands raised. So, your reaction in the debate, Mr. Beaulieu. That is quite a departure. So all of the tools and the possible changes, to foster the protection and promotion of both of Canada's official languages. In fact, what we're interested in is looking into the matter of French, not necessarily both official languages. I will let Mr. Blaney go ahead and we can come back to it. I'm going to let Mr. Blaney go ahead. In fact, Mr. Généreux is in the room and had raised his hand with the clerk. So go ahead, Mr. Généreux. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Lalonde. The committee is supposed to be independent. It seems like you are using this fact to delay tabling the Official Languages Act. Thank you. Next speaker. Okay. I had said Mr. Blaney, but on the list I have Mr. Arsenault on the list before Mr. Blaney. Go ahead, Mr. Arsenault. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, naturally, the A's come before the B's, and I'm very glad of that. What I want to say does follow up on what Mr. Généreux said, and he has been sitting on the committee with me for a dog's age, or since 2015 anyway. So from what I'm reading here, we should look into all of the tools that could support the promotion and the protection of official languages in Canada. And Mr. Généreux, you will remember the report that we produced quickly regarding immigration. So yes, it can have to do with the Modernized Official Languages Act, but it could also have to do with other tools that could promote our official languages. That's just one example. So for my part, yes, I do support this. Looking at the importance of the OLA for the promotion and protection of the language for minority groups. There are many witnesses we could have come and speak on this motion, Mr. Beaulieu. So thank you for that amendment. I think we need to spread our net a little wider, and thank you for that amendment. I'm for it for the reasons I said. Thank you. Mr. Blaney, you have the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I looked at Ms. Lalonde's motion. We've had the Official Languages Act for 50 years. We know it's important to modernize it. And the Conservative Party has already raised concrete proposals to modify the OLA for all official language minority communities. And I'm sure that I should say this for Ms. Martinez-Ferrada, the committee also has a role of looking into the situation of OLMCs, whether it be the Anglophone minority in Quebec or the Francophone minority in the rest of the country. Now, back to Ms. Lalonde's amendment. The motion we're dealing with today opens up a new field for official languages communities for us to look at one of the two official languages because we have received the diagnosis that there is an urgency, and that is regarding the situation of French, which is a minority language community. And particularly, I would like to speak about Quebec. And this is a new field because the committee hasn't ever studied this before, the situation of French in Quebec. I think that we should pay particular respect to the situation of French in the country, especially given that we've already included all other Acadian and Francophone communities in Canada. If we've already extended the study to all official language communities, we're not respecting the motion because the motion aims to look at only one of the official languages. the two official languages are not represented equally. There is a special concern for French in Quebec and outside of Quebec. And I'll refer back to your government's throne speech. And for that reason, I think that the motion in its current form is preferable to the motion as amended. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Blaney. The next speakers are Ms. Martinez-Ferrada and Mr. Beaulieu. So go ahead, Ms. Martinez-Ferrada. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to build on what my colleague, Mr. Arsenault, said on the Modernization of the Official Languages Act. Being able to study it more broadly would let us look at the tools that the government has to support French in all political spheres of the government. I think if we only talk about the Official Languages Act, would not be sufficient. We may want to invite other departments or witnesses. I also want to reassure my colleague, Mr. Beaulieu, about the motion. I think we need to refer to Mr. Beaulieu's motion. In the preamble, it's quite clear that what the motion aims to do. It's focused on French. The preamble makes mention of the speech from the throne to protect and promote French. So the motion in its preamble is very focused on French. I think we should also add the idea that modernizing the OLA will certainly improve the situation for OLMCs in and out of Quebec. But I think we still need to look at all other possible aspects that could improve the situation of French. I think it would be too restrictive to only look at the Official Languages Act. And I can tell you that from an immigration perspective, there are things in that area that should be looked at to improve the situation for Francophones in Canada, and that wouldn't necessarily be possible if we only focus on the Official Languages Act. It would be preferable to have a broader report to improve the situation for official languages communities everywhere in the country. Thank you. Next, Mr. Beaulieu. Your microphone, Mr. Beaulieu. Pardon me. I want to build on what Mr. Blaney said. In the preamble, what we're saying is the main thing we want to study is to follow on what was said in the speech from the throne, which is that the government has the responsibility to protect and promote French not only outside of Quebec, but also within Quebec. And it's also mentioned that there should be steps taken to strengthen the Official Languages Act. So I think that that should be included in the proposal.
So we will also be taking into account the English issue. We can't prevent the Anglophone community from flourishing, but we also want to ensure the future of the French language, and that's the aim of this proposal. Because here we start with a preamble where we talk about the responsibility to protect French, and we conclude by, or rather we come back to the tradition of protecting both official languages. So I don't think we should vote in favor of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. On my speakers list, I now have Mr. Arsenault. I just want to be sure to understand. If I understood Mr. Blaney correctly, I hope I'm not misinterpreting what he said, but it seems to me we're going to be excluding the impact of linguistic minorities. In paragraph C, we all agree with the preamble. We know what the basis for the study is. The speech from the throne talked about protecting our linguistic minorities while at the same time promoting the French fact in North America. I'm a Francophone from outside Quebec, and I'd feel very comfortable addressing Canadians saying that we're going to set aside the Official Languages Act that's been in place for 51 years by disregarding the linguistic minorities in Quebec. It's part of the speech from the throne. What can we do to harmonize this with the French fact in North America that we want to protect and promote? Mr. Blaney, I don't think that that's what you wanted to say, but that's my understanding. It would exclude, it would denature Mr. Beaulieu's motion, the fact that we're recognizing two linguistic minorities in the country under the Official Languages Act. And we have to talk about the Franco-Manitobans, the Acadians, the Francophone speakers in Saskatchewan, the Francescois. Next to me, we have McDonald's and families with English names. Mr. Blaney, you're a perfect example. Blaney, you're a Francophone of Irish extraction. So I'm calling upon everyone's reasonableness. The preamble is excellent because this is what we want to tackle, all of us, how to harmonize what seems to perhaps be paradoxical, but perhaps is not, because our study might prove the contrary. But we want to harmonize. We want to have French flourish in Quebec and throughout North America. The more it's flourishing in Quebec, the more communities like mine will be better off, that of Marie-France, that of all the Francophones outside of Quebec. But we can't negate the fact that in the construction of the Official Languages Act, there are two founding peoples that we wanted to protect while protecting two linguistic minorities. I don't think we can dissociate the two things. But the preamble and all that I've said respect the speech from the throne. And that's what we want to do. That's my grain of salt. I would feel uncomfortable as a Francophone outside of Quebec to tell the other minority recognized in the Official Language Act, well, we don't want to look at the impact it might have on you. It's not important. And I'm going to conclude on this. As parliamentarians, we've all traveled a lot, I'm sure. We have to stop focusing on Montreal because they're Anglophones outside of Montreal. I've got some just across the bridge from me. We mustn't think that Montreal is the only example of Anglophones in Quebec. There are Anglophones all over the province. That's what I wanted to say, but I do support the motion because I think it fits in with everything that we've said and with Mr. Beaulieu's preamble. Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. We will now hear Ms. Latanzio. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I don't have very much to add. The eloquence of my colleague, Mr. Arsenault, is such that he covered all of the elements that I'm looking at, and he did an extraordinary job. The only thing I would like to add is that my colleague, Mr. Beaulieu, went back to his paragraph A that does speak to this idea of the situation of French and English. So we want to include all of this content in these paragraphs and the preamble, and the amendment put forward by my colleague, Madame Lalonde, is quite relevant as to covering off everything, both the preamble and paragraph A of Mr. Beaulieu's motion. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Latanzio. We now move to the Vice Chair, Mr. Blaney. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So in essence, Mr. Arsenault, to answer you, on the contrary, indeed, you'll remember that I mentioned the fact that the French fact in Canada is declining, and the purpose of this study is to look at the decline of the French fact throughout the country, but in particular in Quebec. And as you know, we often in this committee dealt about minority situations without necessarily including Quebec as being in the North American Ocean. That's the new twist here. So I do think we can focus our study on this. And to support all Anglophone and Francophone minorities, well, the committee has recommendations on the modernization of the Act, and we're impatient to see what the government is indeed going to do with regard to modernizing the Official Languages Act. But coming back to this motion proper, I think the original text is perfect, and that's why I plan on not supporting the amendment. So I will now read the sub-amendment of Ms. Lalonde, which states the following. C, examine all of the tools at the available to the government, including possible amendments to the Official Languages Act to enhance the protection and promotion of both official languages of Canada. So I would instruct the clerk to move to the vote on the sub-amendment of Madame Lalonde, please.
Donc, Monsieur Arsenault,
Absolument, avec plaisir.
Monsieur Duguid,
Pour.
Madame Lalonde,
Définitivement, oui.
Madame Latanzio,
Absolument.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada,
Absolument.
Monsieur Blaney,
Je vote contre l'amendement proposé.
Monsieur Dalton,
Je vote contre.
Monsieur Généreux,
Je vote contre.
Monsieur Mazer,
Contre.
Monsieur Beaulieu
Contre.
et Madame
Je vote
Ashton.
contre.
Contre.
Donc, 6 non, 6 nays, 5 oui, 5 yeas.
Merci, Madame la greffière. Donc,
Thank you to the clerk. So Ms. Lalonde's sub-amendment has been defeated. So we are going to continue. At this stage, we have Mr. Beaulieu's amended motion, which I'm now going to call the vote on. So, to summarize, there was a first amendment of Ms. Lalonde. So it is this amended motion we are going to put to a vote. So, yet again, I would instruct the clerk to move to a recorded vote on the motion as amended put forward by Mr. Beaulieu. Go ahead, please.
Monsieur Arsenault,
Pardon, Monsieur le Président, pouvez-vous répéter?
Mr. Chairman, could you please repeat the question? I was explaining that we are voting on Mr. Beaulieu's motion as amended by Ms. Lalonde's amendment at paragraph B.
Oui.
Monsieur Duguid,
Je vote pour.
Madame Lalonde,
Oui.
Madame Latanzio,
Oui.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada,
Oui.
Monsieur Blaney,
Je vote en faveur de la motion.
Monsieur Dalton,
Je vote pour la motion.
Monsieur Généreux,
Pour la motion.
Monsieur Mazer,
Pour la motion.
Monsieur Beaulieu,
pour la motion.
Madame Ashton,
Je vote pour.
11 oui, 11 yeas.
Merci. Donc, la motion de Monsieur Beaulieu telle qu'amendée a...
So Mr. Beaulieu's motion as amended has been carried. So at this stage, I see a few hands up, among them those of Mr. Beaulieu and Mr. Blaney. Mr. Beaulieu, please. Very quickly, I'm thrilled and I wish to thank all of my colleagues. We don't at all want to hinder the Anglophone community, but it is French that is threatened in Quebec right now. English, on the contrary, is on the rise, while French is declining. So that's what our discussion will be dealing with. Thank you. what would be interesting to see is that we vote on different motions, the various ones we have, and then set our priorities. I think we'll have enough time to do this. We still have time left. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Blaney. You have the floor. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So listen, I think we have two beautiful motions in front of us, the motion on the pandemic and the motion pertaining to the situation of French in the country. I see that you've taken the initiative. You took the initiative Thursday to call witnesses. I think that's a very happy initiative, allowing our analysts to do their work. Before looking at our program for next week, you know, Mr. Chairman, we discussed this a lot. During question period, we see that the issue came up again, and we've just unanimously passed a motion. The Official Languages Act dates back to 1969. It was somewhat modernized in 88. My colleagues know this. For us, it is important to move forward with its modernization. I presented two committee members a few weeks ago now a motion, and I believe that, as we say in the House, that I'm asking for unanimity, and I think I'll find it here. This is why, quite serenely, I'm tabling my motion that the committee recommend that the government table its bill to modernize the Official Languages Act before December 11th, 2020, which is the last sitting day, and that the committee report on the adoption of this motion to the House. And I remember that Mr. Arsenault stated that it was important that we see results in this committee. And, Mr. Chairman, in essence, I'll be brief, but I think as members of the committee, we're used to cooperating together, and I would refer you to the letter of the president of the Federation of Acadians. I think we could virtually do a cut and paste with the community group network in Quebec as well with regard to modernization. It dates back to November 4th. Mr. Chairman, might Mr. Blaney just lower his microphone? We're having trouble hearing him. It might help the interpreters. Thank you, Bernard. I'd followed the instructions of the clerk earlier. In essence, dear members of the committee and Bernard, what I was saying is that I have here a copy of the letter that Mr. Johnson sent to all members of Parliament, and there are two elements that are very important to my mind. First of all, the government informs us in this speech from the throne that it plans on tabling a bill, and this commitment wasn't accompanied by a schedule. So, Mr. Arsenault, I was talking about him earlier. He was the spokesperson for the linguistic minority in New Brunswick. I have colleagues, members of other minorities. We also, as you know that in a minority government situation, the more we move forward, the less time the government will have to move forward with this initiative. We fear that if the government doesn't table a bill before the end of 2020, both houses of Parliament won't have time to adopt the changes that we've been hoping for and our communities have been hoping for decades. So we hope our colleagues here will take action as a priority in order to proceed with the modernization of the Official Languages Act. And we also encourage the committee to look at the promotion of French throughout Canada. So, Mr. Chairman, I think we have a roadmap here provided by our communities, both Francophone and Anglophone, who are saying, ask the government, invite the government to move forward. And I would specify here that I did use the term invite, so we're not twisting any arms, but as MPs, we're inviting our government to take action. And I believe that it's very constructive, and the committee was clear. And the Federation was very clear, the Federation of Acadians. I think that all of these communities will look favorably on the study that Mr. Beaulieu outlined in his motion that we've just carried. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'm proposing is that we give notice in order that we invite the government to table its bill on the modernization of the Official Languages Act. It was part of the speech from the throne. It was part of the government's promises. So I think that there'll be a consensus on this, and it will be yet another step.
And I believe it's a way for committee members to demonstrate their wish to be there for minority language communities across the country. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Blaney. So Mr. Blaney's motion has now been presented for debate. Does anyone wish to speak? Mr. Arsenault. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for having given more nuance to what our colleague Mr. Blaney said. I'm not a spokesperson for all minority Francophone communities in Canada, far from it, but I can at least speak for New Brunswick Francophones. We have the SANB in our province, which for decades has been devoted to the safeguard and protection of French in New Brunswick. They have excellent relations with the existing government. So not to contradict what the FCFA said, SANB is the number one defender of French in New Brunswick, and the SANB has a positive relation with the government. So I would like to say, as a New Brunswick Acadian, that I have no problem with recommending what you're saying, but I would prefer to see a mature, proper bill. Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. Mr. Généreux has asked for the floor. Thank you. Mr. Arsenault said this earlier. We are the two oldest, so to speak, members of the committee. I've even been here since 2009. So this modernization has been asked for many, many, many years. The current government was elected over 5 years ago now. And I think the minister was relatively clear today in the House, saying that she was getting ready to table this new bill on modernization. So I think that we should vote on this motion. However, I think it's important for everyone to understand that this committee is independent. And we were saying so again, or we heard so again today in the House from the minister. We have the role of defending the rights of all Francophones outside of Quebec and the Anglophone minority within Quebec. This bill deserves to be tabled as quickly as possible so that we ourselves can assess its breadth as quickly as possible. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Généreux. So now I will take a chance. Is anyone opposed to adopting Mr. Blaney's motion? I would like for the vote to be recorded, please. Yes, with pleasure. Madam Clerk, please.
Monsieur Arsenault?
Je suis d'accord avec ça.
Monsieur Dogood?
Pour.
Madame Lalonde?
Oui.
Madame Latanzio?
Pour.
Madame Martinez-Ferrada?
Pour.
Monsieur Blaney?
Je vote en faveur.
Monsieur Dalton?
Je vote pour.
Monsieur Généreux?
Pour.
Monsieur Mazer?
Pour.
Monsieur Beaulieu?
Pour.
Madame Ashton?
Je vote pour.
Donc 11 oui, 11 yes.
Si, Madame la Griffier.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So Mr. Blaney's motion has been carried. Mr. Beaulieu, the floor is yours. I was going to say, one in the hand is better than two in the bush. So regarding the informal discussion, everyone at that time seemed to agree for us to prioritize the study on French. So I would propose that starting next Tuesday, we prioritize it so that we can begin inviting witnesses, prioritizing the study of French. Very well. If the committee wishes, we may begin that study next Tuesday. In that case, we would have to establish the list of witnesses as quickly as possible so that the clerk may begin making the calls. If that is the wish that you are expressing, committee members, I would say that by noon on Thursday, at the latest, we should send the witness lists to be able to begin next Tuesday. Ms. Lalonde. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Beaulieu, I think in the spirit of cooperation that we saw today, I think we might have moved away from the informal agreement that was reached. And I think that was bothersome, or if we had all followed the informal meeting procedures, which we can't even speak about today, and you all know what I'm talking about. I think we have done good work today. I'm proud to see the committee doing such good work and pass such important motions. We are in the middle of an extraordinary health crisis in Canada. As MPs, when people call you and share all of their anxiety about what they're experiencing in the context of COVID, we hear their stories, but there are certain realities in this crisis that have meant that our two official languages have not always been respected. I think that Ms. Latanzio's study is very pertinent. In this extraordinary work that we've done and in this team spirit, I would like to propose an idea of studies in tandem. I mean, since we already have witnesses coming for this Thursday, we can go ahead and we'll also have Ms. Latanzio's motion, and then Tuesday we might go ahead with Mr. Beaulieu's motion, which is very relevant. So I'm wondering if there's some way we could work together, because we have to keep in mind that we only have 5 sittings left before the end of the session. And I believe we all have a certain feeling of anxiety, and I don't understand it because we're all coming back in January, or I'm coming back in January in any case, and coming back full force. And it's certain that we'll all be working over the holidays and in January. And in January, we will pick back up our good work. But between December 11th and the end of January, there will be a break. And then we will pick back up our good work. So my proposal would be to do our studies in tandem. So perhaps we can speak to the clerk about this. And the clerk or the chair could let us know what the options are, because I'm proposing to the committee that we collaborate in that direction. And it seems to me that our committee is just glowing with cooperative spirit today. Mr. Beaulieu, the floor is yours. Well, inaudible for the interpreter. A number of people were not there at the beginning of the committee who might not have understood everything that was said in discussions. I agree that, yes, we need to work together. We were talking about a study on services in official languages. There was a letter from the FCFA as well. I think it would be important for us to look at a new point of view after the throne speech, and that is why I think that, yes, we should see the witnesses already invited on Tuesday, and we should move on to the study, especially since we all want for this to have an impact on the modification of the OLA, which is urgent. So I think we should move on to that work. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. Mr. Blaney. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And still in that same spirit of teamwork, I find that your proposal of sending the witness list on the decline of French in the country is very reasonable. And I think we should send in those witnesses by Tuesday. I'm also fully in agreement to receive witnesses on Thursday, those witnesses that have always said they were available. And I think that there aren't going to be very many holiday parties in Quebec over these holidays. And Mr. Chair, for Tuesday, on the study on the decline of French, I know that a lot of ink has been spilled on this, but we need to be factual. And often in the committee, one of the great allies is Statistics Canada. So I can let you know that on the witness list for the Conservatives, you will find Statistics Canada because facts are important. And I think that would be a great way to start the study. It would be a great way to start the study before Christmas. So before Christmas, I would like to invite witnesses from Statistics Canada, which has always been an ally for our committee and has helped us to have high-quality reports. And we're looking into the situation of French in Quebec, which has never been studied by the committee before. So Stats Canada contribution would be very meaningful. So I agree for us to have COVID witnesses on Thursday and then on Tuesday to move on to the decline of French study. Thank you. Ms. Latanzio.
I'm going to address myself in English right now. I just wanted to tell my colleagues that the reality is that we are in the second phase of this COVID. And a little bit, as my colleague had suggested, our phone at the office rings because people are in the middle of this pandemic. And unfortunately, there are people that are losing their lives right now. And there are community groups and individuals that are complaining that they're not having access to services in one of the official languages, the minority groups, the Anglophones in Quebec, and I would suspect the Francophones in the rest of the country. And so it is not to privilege one motion over the other. We firmly believe, and I think that the display of cooperation that was eminent in this committee today showed clearly that members want to forge ahead with the other motion and get to work, really, because we are in the middle of November, and I think that it is high time that we move on and we start looking and executing the studies on these two very interesting motions, and the other motion that we passed also this afternoon. So it is not to prioritize one over the other. All I want to say is that I think that in other committees, there has been a possibility to be able to work, as my colleague says, in tandem. I'm going to call it in parallel. So I can see the study being done in 4 to 5 sessions, as I mentioned last week. Do this before the holidays, but if it is the wish of my colleagues to initiate the other study, nothing impedes this committee to be able to alternate. We have 2 days of sittings right now in the committees. We can either devote the first hour to one, the second hour to the other, or move into the first day, which would be Tuesday on one, or Thursday on one and Tuesday on the other, and alternate, so that we would be able to forge ahead with the two very interesting motions that we have before us. And I would suspect that we already have witnesses that have been assigned to come to this committee, before this committee on Thursday, to begin on the pandemic one. And I would see no problem with regards to working on the other one next week, but that we do not start to see that we need to focus on one to the detriment of the other, or one is much more important than the other. I think both have their valid reasons to be able to forge ahead. And remember, the motion, the first one, is strictly on the pandemic. We cannot, in good conscience, start looking into that one, at the end of this pandemic. Canadians are relying on us to be able to deliver services, to be able to deliver information, and just to be cognizant of this pandemic that's still rampant, and people are having issues and disservice, are not receiving communications in languages, and it's not just a question of receiving languages, as the commissioner has well established. It's a question of safety. It's a question of security, guys. So for all these reasons, I know that today there was a beautiful display of cooperation and collaboration amongst all of us, and I wish to pursue in that vein, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that we can march along and do our work. And I, for one, am looking forward to doing this before the end of our session, and with great enthusiasm when we come back in the month of January. Thank you.
Merci, Madame Lattanzio.
Thank you, Ms. Lattanzio. I understand the wishes of committee members. I must say that, as I stated, for next Thursday, the situation is the following. We have 2 hours, but for the time being, we only have 2 witnesses slotted in. And the clerk has made several calls, has left several messages for various witnesses that she tried to get in touch with. We will do our utmost to respect your wishes. In other words, to ensure that we're able to move to Mr. Beaulieu's study outlined in his motion as quickly as possible. Again, as I stated, I would ask you to submit your lists of witnesses for Thursday noon, and we'll juggle with all of this. The clerk and myself, we certainly are expecting calls back. So what might happen is this. Thursday, we might have the study on Ms. Lattanzio's motion, flowing from it, and Tuesday, depending on the witness list you'll be submitting, well, at that time, we will make calls. But it is also possible that we return to committee business, as we call it, and on the Tuesday of the following week, depending on witnesses' ability to appear before us, we might have a second session on Ms. Lattanzio's motion. It's a likely situation. Immediately after our meeting, the clerk and I will follow up, but the sooner you get us your lists of witnesses, the sooner the clerk will be able to send out invitations. We also must keep in mind our analysts. Our analysts worked on the meeting with the commissioner, so we have that motion for Thursday, and the analysts are already working on that motion. So if we have another meeting next Tuesday, well, our analysts will have to work hard in order to produce documentation for us between now and Tuesday. So I understand very well what the committee wishes to do. And at this stage, well, I'm asking you to leave it up to us, leave it in our hands, and we'll keep you abreast as things move forward of any news that might come our way. We have Mr. Beaulieu on the list. So we're not going to be voting on my proposal to set an order of priority. Well, once we have the lists, then we should then set our priorities as far as studies go. If, in fact, no witnesses are available, we could adjust things. But I think it would be important to set out clearly that our priority is that study. That was my intent with the proposal. I understand. But when we talk about the meeting schedule for the committee, well, it's an issue that it's preferable to discuss in subcommittee meetings. I understand what you're saying, but how should I say this? We don't necessarily prioritize a study for scheduling purposes. I understand what committee members want to see done. And as I said at the outset, we could always move forward with 2 meetings in parallel. Our last sitting day is the 11th of December, so we'll have to establish, based on our witness list and those who are available, what we'll be doing over the course of the next 4 meetings. I have 3 speakers on my list, Ms. Lalonde, Ms. Martinez, Ferrada, and Ms. Ashton. Ms. Lalonde, you have the floor. Well, listen, what I would like is this. Perhaps the committee could consider the following. We have 2 sessions per week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Why not be more flexible and use one day for one study and the other day for the other study? While continuing to work on the witness lists. We'll perhaps have to do some work. I know that everyone is very busy these days, but I believe we'll be able to prepare a nice list of witnesses for you and for our clerk, Ms. Menard. Anyway, with regard to our 5 final sessions, I think this would be a nice way of winding up the year. And in January, well, we'll be pursuing our studies. Between now and tomorrow, we might see changes. We know that things are constantly evolving with regard to COVID, with the second wave that's in full flight. And it's very, with great sadness that we're seeing the statistics, the numbers of people who are dying from this virus. We know that there are vaccines coming to us next year. So I think that the 5 remaining meetings will be very useful opportunities for us to deal with the issues that people have complained to our offices about with regard to the crisis and with regard to the linguistic issue that can have a negative impact in this area. Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. I saw Ms. Latanzio's hand raised. I don't know if this was by mistake. So we'll now hear Ms. Martinez Ferrada. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, in fact, I was going to make comments similar to those of Ms. Lalonde. With the time we have left, and I see this in our communities, and it's probably the case in your communities, people are very busy. We have very tight schedules, very specific time slots during the week. We may not necessarily be able to hear witnesses at the times we want to hear them. It's quite a challenge. And if we have 2 committees overlapping, 2 studies overlapping, it'll allow for more flexibility with regard to hearing witnesses. I think that this flexibility will be really needed because we're coming up to the holiday season. People are really extremely busy, have busy schedules, and this would give us more flexibility. It's not a matter of prioritizing one or the other of the 2 studies. The work relating to Ms. Latanzio's motion is already underway, but we also have to respect our agenda with regard to the witnesses. From what I understand, we have witnesses suggested for Thursday. Out of the 35, from what I have understood, only 2 of them might be available. So it just shows how complicated it might be to schedule people when we want to hear them. If we have that flexibility, over time, operationally, with regard to our logistics, etc., it will allow us to move forward with the 2 motions in parallel. Ms. Latanzio's motion aimed at 4 meetings, and the proposal we voted on today will lead to 7 or maybe 8 meetings. So at some point, we'll be able to devote our time to just the motion we voted on today, and we'll look at things in January. As has been stated, we're all coming back in January, so let's give us the space and the time for more flexibility for our witnesses. That's my wish, in order that we'll be able to hear several witnesses. Thank you very much, Ms. Martinez Ferrada. Ms. Ashton?
Oui.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to our difficulties getting witnesses, we suggested that it be the President of Treasury Board as well as Minister Duclos. There was also mention of the FCFA, we mentioned several witnesses. We wanted to ask elected representatives to appear before the committee. We haven't sat for months now with witnesses, so I'm hoping that this will be everyone's wish and that these people will make themselves available as quickly as possible to the committee, because we haven't sat as a committee for a long time. Obviously, I understand our difficulties with regard to getting in touch with people, but we know that these are key players, and we want to hear them. This is a public meeting, too, so I wanted to share this information in public so that people hear this. We're not talking about just anybody here. These aren't organizations with limited capabilities. In today's context, we're talking about elected representatives, people who have central responsibilities, key players. And I do hope that not just for Thursday's meeting, but also for Tuesday's meeting, I hope these people will make themselves available to us. Thank you, Ms. Ashton. I can assure you that the clerk, indeed, based upon this list of 35 witnesses, is going to be moving forward. She's working very hard. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. In the interest of effectiveness and to not waste too much time, I say this. Next Thursday, we have 2 witnesses who are going to be here. Might we not hold a subcommittee meeting during the second hour in order to finalize our planning for the future? Well, I would say yes, it's a possibility, because this afternoon, it was around 2 p.m., I believe, or rather at 3:15, I received the names of the 2 witnesses who have accepted our invitation, and our clerk is pursuing her work. So it's still possible for us to say we'll have a 1-hour meeting with witnesses, and then we could move to committee business. Ms. Lalonde. Mr. Beaulieu, dear colleagues, dear Chairman, I think you've done an extraordinary job, along with Ms. Ménard, our clerk, with regard to calling out to all the witnesses on our lists sent in from all parties. We're a little anxious, we're a little impatient, because people didn't respond immediately. When we call out, we expect a response, but as Ms. Ashton was saying as well, people have all sorts of responsibilities. We're experiencing a health crisis. People are experiencing this each and every day at present. So I think I would like to see us give the opportunity to our witnesses to come forward on Thursday. I think it will be important to submit our list based on the motion put forward and carried today, Mr. Beaulieu's motion. And based on that, we could move forward. Once again, I'm repeating myself, but my colleague who's joined our committee did a very good job with regard to sharing my thoughts. And what we all want to say is that we have 5 meetings left. We could be flexible with regard to the various motions. We could carry out our work in tandem and hear as many witnesses as possible, so that when we come back in January, we can undertake the drafting of our reports. I think we should at least give the opportunity to our witnesses to respond to your phone calls, etc. I'm speaking here to the chairman and to our dear clerk. Thank you very much, Ms. Lalonde. Listen, I would simply like to clarify something earlier when I spoke. I wanted to respond to Mr. Beaulieu. I was talking about 1 hour of meetings with witnesses, and unfortunately, I talked about a subcommittee. No, it's not the subcommittee that would be meeting, because if the committee's meeting, it will pursue its work. It'll go on. We have to be able to prepare our report, table it, have it translated, etc. So it would be a full meeting of the committee, the first hour, with witnesses. Other speakers? Mr. Beaulieu?
Mettre une 3e heure où il y aurait un sous-comité.
Vous parlez de ce jeudi?
Oui.
Non, écoutez, là, c'est trop de démarches. Il faut s'assurer que tout le personnel et que la Chambre des communes ait la capacité pendant cette pandémie-là de répondre. C'est-à-dire que les comités, d'ailleurs... Oui, allez-y, Monsieur Beaulieu. Votre micro, on pourrait vous entendre. Votre micro, Monsieur Beaulieu.
Excusez, j'entends tout le temps la traduction en anglais, mais en tout cas, la réunion est finie. Là.
I always hear I'm hearing the interpretation in English. On the list, I have Ms. Lalonde and Mr. Blaney. With all due respect, I don't understand why we're talking about the subcommittee. I think that earlier today, we adopted a new motion. It was yours, Mr. Beaulieu. Last week, we adopted a motion on the health crisis, the impacts on minority communities, and the impact on their access to services in the language of their choice. In my opinion, we tried to hold subcommittee meetings. We saw what result that gave. And I feel that we have a plan that we're going to move forward with a list of witnesses on the amended motion by Mr. Beaulieu. And we will see about what we hear from witnesses on Thursday. And then after that, we'll move on after Thursday. Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. Mr. Blaney. Yes, I'll be very brief. Essentially, I just want to say that I like the tandem approach of carrying out two studies at once. So if I understand correctly, next Thursday we will have a first hour with witnesses. The second hour will be a bit difficult for the clerks to make us a list or rather to give us a calendar, since we will only have given them our list that same afternoon. Insofar as possible, perhaps we could try and come up with a draft calendar on Thursday afternoon. And as witnesses respond, we could finalize it. But I agree with the approach to the tandem approach for these two studies. Thank you very much. Mr. Blaney, would you like to elaborate on that calendar you're referring to? No, I was wondering if we could talk about it Thursday during the second hour. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Beaulieu, the floor is yours. I just wanted to say that what is usually done is to prioritize motions during the subcommittee, so I don't see why we shouldn't have a formal subcommittee, because now we are working on prioritizing the study and carrying out both in tandem. In my opinion, it might be worthwhile to look at those things in a subcommittee. Well, Mr. Beaulieu, what I was saying to you is that when there is a subcommittee meeting, it really is during hours that are reserved for the meeting. So the subcommittee meets, but then at the following committee meeting, the subcommittee must table a report to the committee. So it's as Mr. Blaney said, if we reach out to a number of witnesses and we receive replies, and if we only receive 2 witnesses for Thursday, then in the following hour, we will carry out committee business, and that will give us an opportunity to talk about how to proceed. Ms. Lalonde, and next, Ms. Lattanzio. I was wondering if it would be possible to ask the clerk if she could send members the list of the 35. Patricia, I think that was what you were going to ask. Yes, I was going to ask if it would be possible to send us the list of the 35 guests who we've invited. Yes, certainly that can be done. In fact, officially, there were 38 witnesses, but then there were 3 that were doubles, so we have 35. And we will send you that list of witnesses. Ms. Lalonde, I don't want to get ahead of myself, Mr. Chair, but it is 5:20. Could you send us that list by tomorrow at the latest? Yes, I just received confirmation that tomorrow morning the clerk will send out the list of witnesses. I have no one else here with their hand raised. So as I was saying, the committee will be able to continue on and establish its calendar and deal with other motions as needed. But I am certainly satisfied with how things happened today. And now we really can say that we are on track for studies that will look into extremely important topics. And starting as soon as Thursday, we will be able to start the studies. Would anyone else like the floor? We have time left. Well, in that case, on behalf of all committee members, I would like to warmly thank all of the staff who has worked for us, our analysts, our interpreters, all of the technicians with us today. The technical problems are behind us. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you an excellent evening.
Cool. Au
Je vous en
revoir.
prie.
Bonne
Bye bye.
soirée.